So you helped start the Roy Griak Invitational, which is the shirt in the back of your view right there for
Yeah.
in high school and college. So talk about forming an invitational. What was that process like?
Well, when I'd always had a big invitational at lacrosse, okay, and I liked organizing those kinds of things. And so and Roy Griak, bless his soul, awesome guy, just an awesome guy. But he had no help either. He was like, I said, no, Roy, we got to do this and this and this and this. I said, let's have an invitational. So we started. I think we had 7 or 8 teams when we first started in '86. And it went a lot. It was called different things, the GBS Invitational, there's all kinds of different names for it. Nike at one time. and but every year it started to grow. And
Mm-hmm.
um but we had to hustle teams and ask people to come in and do stuff for them, gave them coaches gifts and etc. And then it must have been about 95, because that was 9 years later. Um, this is a Griak story. Griak was the most humble, nicest guy in America. Exactly the opposite of me. He was just a good guy. And I said, hey, guess what, Roy? He said, what? I said, we've renamed the Invitational. He said, well, what's it called? I said, it's the Roy Griak. He said, what? He says, no, it's not the Roy Griak. I said, it's the Roy Griak now. He says, well, why? I said, because I formed a committee and we decided it's going to be in honor of you. I said, well, who's on the committee? I said, me. He goes, what? And from then on, we had a Griak bobblehead one year. We had started high school races. We just had and we spent a little more money, and the best story about the Griak, I mean, it's grown and grown and grown. When I left in 2016, it was 400 and some teams, high school and college. Um, and David Benedict, who was our assistant boss, this must have been 2014, 15, someplace in there, kind of towards the end. He said of my tenure, he says, hey, he'd only been on campus like a month. He says, hey, tell me about the Griak. I said, well, it's happening this week, and I really haven't got time to talk to you.
I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. He says, but I just got a couple of questions. He says, how much money do you take in for this meet? In terms of entry fees and sponsorship. It said about 90,000. He goes, wow, that's unbelievable. He said, well, how much do you spend? I said, about 120,000. He goes, what? But then he said the best thing an AD can ever say. He said, it's worth every penny. But now they've cut them back down with the COVID excuse and blah blah blah. They cut their budget down to 70,000. We never had a budget. We just never had a budget because nobody's going to cross me. They just
Yeah.
oh, no, we're not messing with Gary Wilson. He knows where the bodies are buried, so we're not doing that. Yeah.
Let me comment on that, Coach, while you're saying it. Couple things. So naming a meet after a person is great. When I was at Cal LA, there was an actor. He was a shot putter, Tommy Tiny Lister. People know him as Debo from Friday, but he wrestled Hulk Hogan as Zeus. Now he was that guy.
Yeah.
He was, I call him a neighborhood superstar. Everyone in LA knew Debo. So
Yeah.
Debo would always complain, oh, no one at Cal LA does anything. And I'm the head coach, and I show up his house one day just for meet. I said, hey, man, I'm naming the meet after you, the Tiny Lister Classic. And so Debo wasn't as humble as Roy Griak. He was humble, but he goes, oh, coach, that's great. I'm going to get USC to come. I'm going to get Ron Allis to come. And he'd pull up to the track in his Bentley and park on the track, and he'd give the athlete a meet a diamond watch, and he'd honor somebody like Willie Gauld or he'd honor Ron Allis. But that's just a story. So it's great we can honor a guy, but it made our meet big and made people come around. But more on you, the Griak meet. I remember like pre-nationals was the big meet in cross country and all that, but the Griak meet, after a while, every coach is like, no, that's the meet you got to go to. Like that's the meet you get your rankings. That's the meet you see all the people now. It got to the point where it's like the Griak was this was the meet.
Yeah.
The biggest in-season cross-country meet in the country. So can you talk a little bit more about that? For people who don't know how big it is, just the numbers, the teams.
Well, the teams, well, it's kind of, there's not as many college teams now because they're not. Man, I used to go out and hustle hotel rooms and I'd pay guys, not $1 million, but they $4,000 or $5,000, and free rooms and whatever. But you got to hustle it. And right now they're not. Well, what the reason that I just dropped my keys one day and said, okay, the hell with you, because I said to them, and this is about the whole Griak situation, and I'm not going to belabor it, but in 2016, I went to my boss, Mark Ryan, my assistant boss, and I said, Mark, I'm getting to the age where I'm not going to do this forever, but I want to make sure that this meet continues like it's been. I said, so I made $12,000 a year doing it. And so I said, I want to take 2,000 6 times, hire these 6 people. They know the system, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, no, we're not going to do that. I said, what do you mean you're not going to do that? He said, well, we've got 2 GAs that are going to do the meet now. I said, one's a thrower, nice kid, and one's a pole vaulter. Neither of them have ever been to a cross-country meet in their life. He said, well, that's what we're going to do. I said, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I said, I'll tell you what, here's my keys. And I dropped my keys and I said, that's it. And I walked away and never looked back. I had a whole, in someplace in my office here, I had a Griak manual. It was, I don't know, 150 pages, what to do, when to do it, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Never, and then they just started cutting back. When COVID hit, as you know.
Yeah.
Oh, we got COVID.
Yep.
So now it's not the meet that used to be. And Nutty Comb started, other meets started, and then it just kind of went away. But I guess I'm bragging, but as you know, Chris, you and I, we know thousands of people. And so if you treat them right and you take care of them, they're gonna honor that. The loyalty factor is huge, and the relationship factor. And so that's where that's why it went. But now it's not the same. I mean, high school teams still come, but and some colleges come, but it's not the meets it used to be that way. So
yeah, it sucks when you build something really big and you see it kind of start to crumble, like, because it's relationship it's just keep it going. Hey, just keep it going. Don't, because once it starts to fall apart, it's falling apart fast.
Yeah. You have to, people say to me all the time, they say, well, when do you start working on the next year's Griak? I said, the day the Griak's over. Well, what do you mean? Yeah. I said, no, you're calling coaches. You go to the convention, you twist arms, you do whatever you need to do to get it going. But it is what it is. I'm not bitter about it. I just, I'm almost 77 years old. I got other things to be pissed off about. I'm old.